Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Racing with Ryan podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Stevens. Got another exciting show for you here on this week's episode. And before we get into the thick of things, let me thank our sponsors right off the bat. Of course, we've got to thank Paramount Medical Billing, our good friends at F&F Racing, Ken Copley Racing, and of course, Doug Samian with Do All Lawn and Tree for all supporting the show. Plus a shout out to Speedway Video for always providing us great content for us to go back and look and check things over when we go to talk about the show. And we've got some other exciting things in the works that hopefully will be on board here in the next episode or two. But with that said, on today's show, we'll be talking all about New Smyrna Speedway as we had the Spring Fling event, which was a little bit different than we initially anticipated, but hey, we got the event in, and I will say that it ended up being a lot more fun than it looked like it was going to be on paper. And I say this a lot. I've had episodes about this a lot. You can never really judge a book by its cover, and sometimes even when you get there, you're like, man. But then you let the event play out, and you're like, yeah, that was fun. All right, yeah, I think people got their money's worth. So that's what I can say if I were to put, last week's New Smyrna event in a nutshell. So we'll recap it all. We'll check out all four divisions quickly. And then at the end of the show, we'll pop over to Darlington, talk about the NASCAR race weekend over there, see how that all went. Pretty amazing thing going on right now with Tyler Reddicks. I'll say that much. We'll take a look at the Racing with Ryan podcast fantasy league, see how everybody did on their picks this week, see how the standings are looking. And then we'll kind of finish up with the 16, where we'll take a look at the points, because I believe there was some more shuffling after some people had kind of an up and down day over there at one of NASCAR's oldest racetracks. So thank you for coming along for the ride. And with that said, we will jump right on into the good stuff here. We'll start over at the New Smyrna Speedway. By the way, as I bring up those results, congratulations to Ty Majeski. He did win the Rattler over at South Alabama Speedway. No surprise. I guess he's won six or seven times? 6, 7? Anywho, over to New Smyrna. Ashley Holmes, Jack's Trucks for the main event, and it was a small field, one of the smallest fields we've had for the trucks in a long time. We knew we were going to be a little bit down on trucks with the Gorhams not being there. They went to South Alabama to play the late model. So that was 2 trucks off the bat that we missed. Nolan Mesa was not there, which was a surprise. Jeffrey White was not there. Garrett Thompson was not there. Bradley Hott was not there. Those are just a couple right off the hip that weren't there. Luckily, we did have JT Chastain in attendance. Everybody else that was there, the other 7 drivers, were there on opening night. So the field was small, but in my opinion, sometimes that leads to good storylines, because it was wide open with Gorham not being there. It really looked like it was going to be a JT Chastain kind of night. And after the heat race, he and Brooke Golly kind of got into it. JT went on to win the heat. The invert on the night was an 8, and we can only do up to half the field. So it was a 4-car invert. And, I kind of thought this was going to be a track position race. Since the field was kind of smaller, I didn't foresee a lot of cautions. I didn't count them out necessarily, but I really thought whoever could get the jump up front would end up winning the race. And up front was Grayson Greaves in the 0-5. He would get out to the lead early. Another truck I was watching on this night was Nick Provost. Nick is driving the old 192 Anthony Lassard truck now, and we talked about that with him during the pre-race show when we had the autograph session. And he's like, yeah, still getting used to this. Nick, a sophomore driver, one of the young up-and-coming drivers. We're seeing that tide now begin to turn for some of these younger guys. They're finally getting their breaks, right? I think Nick is in line to perhaps battle for wins this year. Maybe, just maybe get one or 2. Obviously, when Gorham comes back, they're going to have to go through him. But next time George is here, he has to go to the back. So we will see how it all shapes out. But this was a good race. It was clean, and it would be Grayson Greaves who would use the pole position to get that track position. And with the race kind of having that green look to it, he was the man to beat. JT Chastain, in my opinion, I'm not sure if they made adjustments or if they just missed it after the sun went down, because that's the tricky part now that the clocks have been turned back. So the heat races are still heat races. It's in the heat of the day, right? And then come feature time, sometimes even, depending on when your race is, that dew can settle in. The track will be slicker. It'll completely change. Sometimes it cools down, especially this time of year. You can still get it to cool down. So I don't know if Chastain just missed the setup or what, but he started fourth and finished fourth. He was not really a factor in this one. The race really came down to watching Becca Monopoly, who battled tooth and nail with Nick Provost. And once Becca got clear of Nick, she was able to chase down Grayson Greaves. And coming to 2 to go, it was like, whoa, we got a race on our hands here. And Becca was able to get to Grayson, come to the white flag, and they raced it hard. Becca got to Grayson, sent it down into turn number 3, and pushed him all the way off turn number 4. And they ended up kind of side by side. It was one of those photo finishes where you knew who had it, even though it was a good finish. It was exciting. Becca could have done everything. She did do everything but turn Grayson. She could have turned him. She could have knocked him up out of the groove. She could have taken this win away from him, but Becca decided to race Grayson here. And it was a thrilling finish. I know the numbers were not there, but this was probably one of the better truck races, just because we kind of cut out some of the slack, if you will. I'm not saying that, when we have more trucks, it's because there's bad drivers, but the more vehicles you get into space, the more apt you are to have contact and trouble. And, we had the big wreck a week ago, which took out some guys. Timmy Todd wasn't back. That's another one that just came to my mind. So with the field down a little bit, it gave more space to race, and we were able to have that long run. And we had comers and goers there at the end, and it was a great finish. But when the dust settled, it was Grayson Greaves who got his first career win, taking advantage of the situation of the evening. And a driver that has really started to gain confidence over the last season and a half. He's got that win now. He knows what it feels like. So when he is battling with Gorham and White and we get everybody back, when he's got a 4th place truck, he can now know what it's like to parlay that into a win and know what it's like to battle up at the front and hold off a former champion, Becca Monopoly. So if there's any doubt about Grayson Greaves and his ability, especially with how much he's improved over the last couple of seasons, all doubt erased as he finally gets that first career win, holding off Becca. And I let Zachariah interview Grayson. I did have Zachariah Cartledge with me up there in the tower, doing his first live broadcast announcing. He races the Bomber A Division, number 16 car, one of the rookies out there. His interest and overall passion in motorsports is announcing, and with Zach Miles following the IHRA tour this year, there will be some openings, and Zachariah has stepped up to help fill the void when he's able to, and he did a fine job. But Zachariah was telling me Grayson Greaves is one of the guys that he's gotten to know, and so I let him do the interview. So I got to just kind of sit back and watch it, but I made sure to get in there and congratulate Grayson. And I saw them afterwards and was able to joke around with them for a little bit and told them congratulations. So that was definitely one of the feel-good stories on the night, first career win for Grayson Greaves. I got to do the interview with Becca Monopoly, who came home in second, and I liked Becca's kind of tongue-in-cheek interview. I think Becca's mic skills have developed quite a bit. She's not afraid to take that shot now without overstepping the lines and being like, oh, you shouldn't have said that. I was like, first of all, it's nice to see the 59 competing for wins here again. I know she's a fan favorite, and I'm sure there's some people in the stands really want Becca to win that race, and maybe some that weren't as happy for Grayson Greaves as the rest of them were. But when I asked Becca, I'm like, man, what's it going to take to make this more of a consistent deal, seeing you back up near the front? She goes, George not being here. And then she's kind of like, yeah, I kind of wondered if I could channel my inner George on that final lap, but I decided not to. And I just thought those comments were cheeky, but I thought they were good and added some spice to the post race there, and thought it was a fun interview. Good to see Becca not afraid to let her personality shine through a little bit now. And she did a great job. And I think a Becca Monopoly win would be very popular. because it has been a little while, and it's nice to see that team compete. And a small team, basically mom and dad and Beck at the track, maybe a couple helpers here and there, but they do most of it on their own. It's pretty impressive what they've been able to do for all these years. Going home in third was Nick Provost, first career podium. Got to interview him as well, and he's like, yeah, just still kind of getting used to this new Northern truck, and like, what's it going to take to dial it in? He's like, a few more laps. So keep your eye on the 23 Nick Provost. I think he is going to shine later on in the season. I think he's a driver in line to get his first career win. As we mentioned, JT Chastain, perhaps the favorite coming into the feature, had to settle for fourth. Chuck Hires was fifth. Sixth was Brooke Ollie, who recovered from the heat race incident. Dalton Smith back after the wreck, but still just, man, they get that truck fast, and then something bad happens, and then they got to chase it all over again. So we're hoping that Dalton Smith kind of is able to rebound here, and then Randy Kuhn finished in the 8th spot in the Whelen number 2 machine. Next on the list here, the super stocks. We had 7 of them in the pits, but this was a war of attrition on the evening. Bobby Holly had motor problems, it would appear, in the heat race. That car was smoking big time. So he had to jump behind the wheel of the 09 of Thomas Cummins. So Thomas did not start the feature, but Bobby Holly hopped in that 09 car to try to get some kind of a points day going. And I'll tell you, he salvaged his night. More on that in a minute. Gage Spears was out early. They had a cracked brake rotor, so he was out early. George Spears was leading for a while, and then he broke. So we were down to 4 cars there at the end, and things got kind of spread out. Justin Spears would go for a spin, setting up a shootout for the win. Tyler Pernesti, who battled with George Spears in a great race there at the beginning before George broke, had the race in command. Was able to hold Justin Spears off. Spears went for the spin, then was able to, on the restart, try to go after Tyler, but Tyler had the better car, and Pernesti would hang on to get his second career win. It was a weird super stock race. It was still entertaining. The storylines and the attrition, had me and Zachariah wondering, Matt Jarrett, who's back there running half a track behind in third, he could win the thing with all the attrition we've seen. So it was a wild one for different reasons, but Tyler Pernesti got the win. Justin Spears was second. Matt Jarrett, first time out in the 12 car this season, first podium for that car. From what I understand, he and that team's agenda really trying to get that car shook down for a pure stock event over at Orlando Speed World in May. Run it a few times, get the rust knocked off it, and go to town. But he finished third. Got to take a podium when you can get one, right? And then Bobby Holly, driving the 09 for Thomas Cummins, would get the 4th place finish. And I'm going to see if I can load up the points here in a minute, because I think that could be a season-saving deal there for Bobby Holly. George Spears was 5th. And, excuse me, getting the yawns in early here tonight. It's been a long day. Gage Spears 6th, and Thomas Cummins DNS. We're going to save the Bomber Bees for last. Plenty of fuel to ignite that fire in a moment. Florida Southern Ground Pounders with another great field. 14 cars were in attendance. Pretty fun race, but we did have a wild wreck in this one. Hank Sanders got in the back of Eddie Freeman, and Colin Smith kind of behind the incident. I'm not sure if he was just trying to avoid and hit another car, but Colin Smith got on the outside wall and would crash out pretty hard. So when the dust settled in this one, the overall victory, and for the Ground Pounders, they're all running their own race, but we still have an overall winner, and that would go to Art Koonsman. And that would mean he would also be your stock car winner. Plus, Toby Smith would win the modifieds. And the leading sportsman on the night was Frank Pelkey in the 4D machine. He and Eddie Freeman had a great little race. And now that we've really established the multi-class racing here with the Ground Pounders, the little mini battles throughout the field are fun to watch. When Art Koonsman gets clear of the field and he's out there by, half a straightaway on the rest of the pack, you look back around 6th or 7th, and you'll see Frank Pelkey battling with Eddie Freeman, or, Scott Phobes or Colin Smith, and, you got yourself a little race going on. So, all in all, a great night for the Ground Pounders, another great turnout. Good to see a few new guys out there. Scott Booley, one of the rookies. Who's the other rookie this year? Is it Robert Piccolo? I think it might be Robert Piccolo. But But yeah, these guys are just having a ton of fun. Cars are cool to look at. Sometimes we get some wild action. We had the wreck in turn one with Hank and Colin and Eddie. You hate to see these cars get torn up, but unlike some other vintage series, these guys aren't doing a parade with predetermined winners. These guys are racing, and when you race hard, sometimes you wreck hard too, and that's just a product of the territory and something that unfortunately happens every now and then. So Hank Sanders probably going to pull the red car back out. It might work out better for him, but it's always cool to see what Hank's going to bring to the track. He's brought so many beautiful machines. The Stefanik machine, though, might need some work after this one. But our Koonsman, the overall winner, Toby Smith, second, Cush Rivette, third, fourth for Eric Sauer, Scott Cutter rounding out your top five there for the Ground Pounders, and it was Robert Piccolo, Frank Pelkey, Eddie Freeman, Laurie Bonaparte, and Scott Fobes, the top 10. All right, so let's head up to the Bomber Bees, the StevensmithIncorporated.com Bomber Bee division. 21 cars in attendance. I was pretty shocked when I got to the track. I'm like, oh yeah, I thought trucks we were going to have about 10. We were a little off of that. I expected the Bomber Bees to be 12, 13. And, walking through the pits, I'm like, oh yeah, there's plenty of these. And we had a bunch of new ones. And then there ended up being 20 come heat race time. And then Cody Benoit showed up last minute and started dead last in the field and would be a player in this one. But it was really weird because Skinny didn't show up. He told me he's just running family fun nights, and he's sticking to that. Spencer Dean did not show up. A couple other guys who were here on opening night did not show up. So the points are going to be all jumbled. But where we had 6 or 7 guys that didn't show up for the second race, we had 10 or 11 new ones that did. Some guys from other tracks, but I think that's where the controversy is coming from this week. Those guys from the other tracks, and Cody came from South Alabama to race. They finished up the Crown Vic thing, and then he drove back across made it over here to start the feature. And first, we'll tell you about the race, and we'll tell you about the what's fueling the controversy here. This race was awesome. 21 cars starting. You had Dustin Higdon at the back. You had Zach Curtis starting back mid-pack after the invert of the heat races. And Cody Benoit, I think you pronounce... I want to say Benoit because, I used to watch wrestling. So I think about that guy who WWE wants to erase. Cody Benoit went from last to, 5th in the first set of corners. It was incredible. The start he got... It was Zach Curtis-esque, but he did it on the high side because you can't use the Monroe Express lane down on the grass anymore. So... it was an incredible start, and the Dustin Hayden's coming up through there. Zach Curtis coming up through there. But it would be Chucky Hearn in the 3. Where'd Chucky start? 5th, according to this here. He would get up there, and boy, was that number 3 car fast. First time we've seen Chucky at New Smyrna. I don't know if ever is the right word, but in my time there, it's the first time we've seen him race. One of the Citrus County guys, and boy, he was the man to beat. And this race was insane because there were so many cars, and they kept trying to make things happen. And yet, we went the first 17 laps, I think, caution-free. It wasn't until Cheyenne Woodman went for a little spin and caught up another couple of drivers. But everybody's doing a great job. And it's funny, Tom from Speedway Video, we were chatting about this race on the way home. And we were like, man, I don't know about you, but I felt like this race, it felt kind of like an enduro. And he goes, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I was thinking while I was filming it. Because I had to zoom all the way out just to keep up with all the stuff that was going on. Because there's guys going through traffic here, a pass here, and you guys were commenting all over the place. And it's like, yeah, it felt like an enduro. And we almost got through the whole thing without a caution, which I thought this race was going to take about an hour to get through. And these guys and gals did a phenomenal job out there. And we had a bunch of new drivers out there. We had inexperienced drivers out there. And really, everybody did a good job. And it was fun to watch. It was really fun to watch. After the caution, though, it's kind of where we figured that Zach Curtis would show up, right? Chucky Hearn's big lead went away. Benoit got a chance to get up there. We went back to green. We were trading some paint. And then when the checkers flew, Chucky Hearn would take the win over Cody Benoit, who did everything he could to get up through the field. Those guys would go 1-2, and then Zach Curtis in third. The thing I failed to mention is this race ended up being $550 to win. It's $150 to win now, thanks to Steven Smith Incorporated, sponsoring the Bomber B division. But Bob Mason came over to me right before the start of the feature, and he handed me $400, and I said, "Bob, what's this for?" And he goes, "For these guys." And I was like, "To win?" He goes, "Sounds good to me." Bob was impressed by the turnout, guys. And you never know. Bob Mason is always watching. And when he sees something he likes to throw a little money at it, if you will. And, I kept announcing it, tried to announce it a whole bunch before the race started to get these guys into it. And some of them probably heard it and were racing hard. And it was a good race. It really was. Cool to see a new winner, right? So the races end. I have to be back in the morning for quarter midgets, so I did not want to stick around all evening. I needed to get home and get some rest. And when I went to leave, they were chatting, and I saw Cody Benoit walk over to Rusty, and he looked agitated. He did not look happy. So I figured, something's going to happen, and wake up in the morning to discover that Zach Curtis sent me a message holding the money, and I responded back to him, "You always end up with the money. You always end up with the money." And unfortunately, and I say unfortunately for the drivers, not because, it's a rule that they broke, but they had the top two, Chucky Hearn and Cody Benoit, were DQ'd because they were using E85 ethanol fuel, and you can't use that here. I kind of was chatting with Dustin about it a little bit. I guess that's a new Smyrna rule, but again, it is the driver's responsibility to understand the rules. And when you go to a new track, I honestly, and I said this last week, if it were me and I was going to a new racetrack, I would read their rules. I would see what was different from what I normally do. Control F things, even if you're unsure. Fuel is always big. The quarter midgets, we make them run the fuel from across the street, so that when quarter midgets come to race, even the little track, they've got to drain their fuel and run the specified fuel, to keep additives out and different things that could add horsepower gains, and even at quarter midgets that matters. So it's just one of those things. And in my opinion, maybe it was on purpose, maybe it wasn't, but I'm going to give these guys the benefit of the doubt. They don't race here that often, if ever. So they probably just, hey, whatever fuel's in the car, they showed up with it and ran with it. You're only going to need a couple of gallons to get through 28 laps of racing and a practice session or two. And so they probably just used whatever they had in the car. And unfortunately, it did not pass tech. And, I've heard some murmurings from various people, but sometimes I hear things from certain people and I just kind of brush it off. I've heard some murmurings about E85 fuel, and honestly, I didn't really know it was a deal. I didn't know. It's been explained to me that it's a horsepower advantage, this and that. I don't know what. I guess it's just to keep costs down because it is more expensive, right? I think it is. Maybe not. Listen, I don't know. I don't know. The stuff I have to buy for my lawnmower is more expensive, but I think that's ethanol free. So I think I'm thinking the wrong thing. I don't know. I don't know what exactly the rule is in there for, but it is a rule. And when you have rules, if you don't enforce the rules, then what good are the rules? So unfortunately, those guys were disqualified, and I hate it for them because they put on a hell of a show. And I hope that doesn't deter them from coming back, because I feel like that stuff happens all the time. Like, people show up, they don't have their stuff right, they get DQ'd, and then they throw a tantrum. And I'm not saying these guys did. I'm not saying I don't know. I didn't go look at their Facebooks. They're allowed to feel how they want to feel. But I hope that they'll just do it right and come back and have some fun, because I want to say they still had fun driving the wheels off the race cars and putting on the best race of the night, right? Hopefully they come back and get it right. But I hate that there was controversy for the second week in a row. The winner of the last race, it's this, first time winner. It's exciting, and it's all for naught. And then when the dust settles, it's Zachary Curtis who picks up the money in the win in his first start of the season. Justin Phillips, though, would come home in the second spot. Nico Garano would be third. Fourth would be Dustin Igdon, who started 20th. That's pretty darn impressive. Sean Bailey was 5th, Tim Nicholas 6th, Jason Scoverin was 7th, 8th was Chuck Rush in the K9 machine. Let's see. I just lost my train of thought. Sorry. Lindsay Sammy in 9th. Good recovery for that team after they burned the midnight oil to get her car back after the wreck. Huggy Bear William Hyman had a good run going up in the top 5. Had problems late, finished 10th. 11th was Randy Straley. Then it was Jason Bartram, who made the trip over with his wife, Ashley. Jason, a standout performer in the Sportsman Series, but they made the trip over on an off weekend at Auburndale, and they did not go up to South Alabama, so they came to run the Crown Vics, and Jason finished 12th, and Ashley did fine herself, but the long run at the beginning kind of got her behind the 8 ball. James Leavenworth was 13th, Don Brayton 14th, 15th for Cheyenne Woodman, one of our rookies, Chuck Cannell 16th, 17th for Ashley Bartram, Amy Gamache in 18th, Mike Gamache in 19th. They had a tough day. Charles Hearn DQ'd after taking the checkered flag, and then Cody Benoit also disqualified for the fuel. So there you go. Heat race winners on the day were Nico Garano and Zachary Curtis. Controversy aside, this ended up being a very exciting night. It was a lot of fun. We got through the program in a very reasonable amount of time. I think 4 classes on a night is perfect. I think 5 should be the max. This upcoming Family Fun Night with the addition of the Mod Minis this year and spectator racing, it'll be a little bit of a marathon. Speaking of the next event, which will be the Easter Hop Family Fun Night, $5 Family Fun Night featuring a Sportsman 60, will not be on the 4th. It will be on the 11th. So I will put up the calendar graphic. I'm kind of taking a pseudo week off, just getting caught up with some other things. I've got rookie stuff to update, but I'll get a calendar for April because we only have 2 circle track nights. We're off on the 4th for Easter. Then we're going to run the Easter Family Fun Night on the 11th. And then the 18th is a truck beach bash thing that I have nothing to do with and will not care about. And then we have the Orange Blossom Super Late Model 100 on the 25th. So month of April, a little bit, we got a couple off weekends in there. But April 11th is when we will be back. So I am going to see, I've been fighting this computer all day. It's very, very slow. I think we're going to be getting a new computer here soon because I'm trying to load the points. Here we go. Because there was some shuffling in the point standings. I'm just going to go over the top 5 in the divisions that did run. Ashley Holmes, Jack's Trucks. After the shuffle, Grayson Greaves now with a 2-point lead over Nick Provost. Becca Monopoly's 16 back. Chuck Hires 19 back. And Randy Kuhn in 5th, 26 back. In the Super Stocks now, Tyler Pronesti up 3 over Bobby Holly. See, I told you Bobby Holly saved his, perhaps saved his season by hopping in that 09 car. 7 points back is Justin Spears, and 8 points back is George, and Gage Spears now 15 back in the 8. And then in the Bomber B division, sponsored by StevensmithIncorporated.com, Dustin Higdon with a 27-point lead over Tim Nicholas, 35-point lead over Lindsay Sammy, 36-point lead over Randy Straley, and 42-point lead over Cheyenne Woodman. So that's pretty incredible there, how that has all shuffled around. So there's that for the Bomber Bs. And then we'll do the overall. No, we're not doing points for the Ground Pounders. That's going to be a separate thing. So we will catch it up. We'll catch it up there. But let's see. Just kind of looking at this, Art Koonsman's leading the stock cars, Toby Smith leading the modifieds, and Frank Pelkey leading the Sportsman. So there you go. That is our rundown from the new Smyrna Speedway. It was a good night. Hate the controversy at the end, but that's racing sometimes. You got to come correct, you know. All right. Thanks for sticking around with me. Let's head over to Darlington. Check out the action, the NASCAR action. Let's start on Friday night. Truck Series, best finish of the weekend. They had a late race caution. Some guys took tires, and Corey Heim came storming out of nowhere on fresher tires to beat Ross Chastain in the final couple of corners to pick up a kind of a surprise win in the 5 truck. Boy, it looked like Ross Chastain had the race in hand after he and Karsten Hocevar were battling late. Hocevar had a tire go down. Ross just couldn't hold on those final couple of corners, and Corey Heim took the win. And then on Saturday, Justin Allgaier picked up yet another win at Darlington in a pretty standard but entertaining O'Reilly Auto Parts Series race. Again, the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, the former Xfinity Series, Nationwide Series, Busch Series. Pick your poison. The middle series there, Justin Allgaier picked up the win. And then on Sunday, I'll tell you, I'm not going to spend too much time picking this race apart. This was getting hyped up with the lower downforce package and the tire wear and all the fall off that we were expected to see, which we did get, but I think it was pretty much all the same for everybody. Maybe the race didn't have the craziness that we expected, but it was a good race. It was a pure race, Nobody's upset. Oh, the only people upset are ones wearing tinfoil hats and like conspiracies. But it was a very standard race, only a couple of dust-ups, and it was more competitive than the race here in the spring a year ago. And I think a lot of that is Tyler Reddicks' plethora of issues. Early in the race, I think the first lap, he bottomed out, killed the alternator. They had to pit and put a big battery in it, which added weight to the car, which is a disadvantage, by the way. His cool suit wasn't working right. They had to pit several times. So even though he had the best car, he was behind the 8 ball and stuck in traffic a lot of this race. And that turned things over at the beginning to Brad Keselowski in the 6 car. Brad would actually win the first 2 stages. But I will say, I thought this was at the end of stage 2, but one of the stages, the way that Tyler Reddick was able to close in on Brad Keselowski, and I thought it was in stage 2, but according to Racing Reference, I'm wrong about that. It was stage 1. At the end of the stage, Reddick was closing in on Keselowski, and I'm like, I think Tyler Reddick is going to win this race if he can stay out of trouble. I expected some carnage towards the end, and it really didn't happen. The race only had a couple of incidents. The biggest of the day was lap 112. Denny Hamlin misjudged the corner and got into the 43 of Eric Jones, turning him around. Bubba Wallace would get caught up in this, and Bubba would not be the same the rest of the day. Got some damage after contact with the wall and struggled to a 34th place finish, which is definitely going to take him down the standings. He was second coming in, and this is going to hurt him. So that was one of the incidents that happened. Riley Herbst went for a spin on the front straightaway on lap 198, and then after that, the rest of the race was green. The last 91 laps of this race were run under green. Now, there was another incident that occurred, but it did not draw a caution. There's a couple of incidents that occurred that did not draw cautions in the late stages. Tyler Reddick, who's going through the final pit cycle, would get in the back of Chris Buescher at a very competitive car, picked up a bunch of stage points, and had a what seemed like a top 5 car. Buescher was coming into pit, apparently didn't wave, and Reddick got into the back of him and turned him sideways. Kind of ended Buescher's competitive day and didn't hurt Tyler Reddick that much. Looking at the lap breakdown here, Brad Keselowski would lead during the final pit cycle, but when Reddick got back up to speed with 28 laps to go, he would track down Brad Keselowski and make the race-winning pass, and without any cautions or anything like that, Tyler Reddick, with the best car, would finally get the clean air that he needed, and he would win the race. So looking at things here, Tyler Reddick led the first 45. He started having those problems, had to battle back from several different pit stops. Led again late for a lap or two during pit cycles, and then led the final 28. So he did not dominate this race as far as the leaderboard went, but he had the dominant car, and when he got out in front, they didn't have anything for him there at the end. So Tyler Reddick picks up his 4th win of the season in 6 races. The other winners, of course, Denny Hamlin and Ryan Blaney. So no surprise winners this year. I mean, Reddick, didn't win last year. Now he's got 4 on the year. 23XI coming off the lawsuit. So everybody's like, oh, NASCAR's giving him the wins. They're giving him more horsepower. They're fixing it for him. Well, I was talking to my girlfriend on Tuesday night while we were cooking dinner, and I said, oh, hey, by the way, because she's from Chicago originally, so big Cubs fan, but also Chicago Bulls fan. She knows who Michael Jordan is, of course, and she knows that Michael Jordan owns this NASCAR team with Bubba and Tyler and Riley Herbst. She probably doesn't even know Riley Herbst exists, but anyway, she does now. She's listening to this. There's a 3-car team. But I was mentioning this to her. I'm like, yeah, Reddick won again. He's got 4 wins on the season, and I'm like, so of course everybody thinks it's rigged. And she goes, I was so impressed, and I was just like, you're amazing. She goes, well, that seems far fetched considering the way he won the Daytona 500. And I was like, well, look at you. And I'm like, that was kind of a crazy finish, wasn't it? And she's like, yes, I will not forget it. And the fact that, because she had dozed off, we had watched the end of the 500 later on in the evening because we didn't catch it live. We're doing other things. You can go back and listen to the podcast if you don't know what that was. But she's like, yeah, I'll never forget it because I woke up in the final lap because you and her son, we were going crazy because we were into the finish, and Reddick kind of had it all fall right into his lap, and so she remembered that. So for her to pick up on that immediately and not just be like, oh, well, maybe that does have something to do with it. I was just like, man, that's impressive. She's picking up on this racing thing little by little, and she's at least something we can have conversations about. It's pretty cool. So, but congratulations to Tyler Reddick, another win. Second was Brandon Kozlowski. Third, Ryan Blaney. He had a kind of a quiet day, but a nice third place finish. Carson Hocevar was fun to watch in the final stint there. He came from like dead last on the field to finish fourth. Austin Cindric in the 2 had a much-needed top 5 run in fifth. Ty Gibbs, another top 10 in sixth. Daniel Suarez continues to have a pretty good season in the 7 car. A lot of people thought he was going to be an afterthought this year, but off to a good start, 7th. William Byron, 8th. Chris Buescher, like I said, the end of his competitive day was that contact there with Reddick and the pit cycle, but he still finished 9th, so a good points day for Buescher overall. Eric Jones would battle back for the spin to finish 10th. Denny Hamlin had all kinds of problems throughout the race, but held on for 11th. Chase Briscoe, 12th. He was involved in an incident late. He got into somebody. I think it was Riley Herbst. They got into the wall with a few laps to go. He finished in 12th. Really hurt me in 36 for 36. Other notables, Shane Van Gisbergen in 14th, a nice recovery after the terrible run at Vegas. Chase Elliott 15th. Ross Chastain struggled 16th. Christopher Bell, a driver a lot of people thought would be up in the mix for this race, 19th, and that was on speed. They just had a bad day. Kyle Busch, 21st. Let's see. AJ Allmendinger needed a big day. He finished 30th. They were just not Colleague Racing was not good. They were 30th with Allmendinger and 31st with Ty Dillon. Kyle Larson was up in the top 10 for much of the day, but faded to 32nd late. He got into the wall, broke a toe link. So he limped home 32nd. Joey Logano was 33rd on pure speed. This team just missed it. They were 3 laps down. It's not like they hit the wall and were damaged. They were just bad. And then Bubba, we talked about him in 34th. And you had Herbst, Ware, and Hill, so no surprise behind him. So Larson, Logano, and Wallace going to take a dip in the point standings for sure. We'll take a look at the points here in just a little bit with 36, or with our look through the 16. But for now, we are going to head over to the Racing with Ryan podcast Fantasy League, take a look at that. But before we do that, I'll remind you, next week we go to Martinsville, one of my least favorite tracks with this particular car. One of the worst races ever was the first time this next-gen car went to Martinsville Speedway in 2022. The package, the tire, all of that has gotten better. We'll have a little more horsepower this year. I think the race will be better, but the way this car is so tough, the cars are like tanks at these tracks sometimes. You can barely move people out of the way. I don't expect much in the way of carnage. Maybe some beating and banging, some pushing and shoving, but I don't think it's going to be all that great a race, so I'm not really excited for it, but I am going to watch it when I get a chance, and we'll talk about it next week, but Martinsville coming up, so expect, Gibbs, Hendrick, somebody from that camp to be good. Looking at Darlington, boy, I did terrible. This week, it was Obbs Trackhouse who got the win over Bob's Ford. Zach's Dodge was 3rd. 4th was Staffordshire Motorsports. 5th was Bomber 93. Then it was 76 Motorsports, Cole Trickle Jr., Tyler Vickery, Richie Petty Jr., and Lost Highway Sim Racing rounding out the top 10. I was 14th, guys. I finished dead last this week with 143 points. Pretty bad. That is awful from your host. So let's check the overall standings now. The win for Obbs Trackhouse keeps him in first over Cole Trickle Jr. by quite a bit now. Let's see. Let me do some quick math. 56 points over Cole Trickle Jr. Bob's Fords is back in third. Bomber 93. John Gross is in fourth. Oh, my gosh. Get me off that. See, the way this thing, it has a drop-down menu, and I go click overall, then it takes me forever to get it back to where I can actually scroll down and see the rest of our standings. Anywho, yours truly, even with a terrible day, I'm still fifth in the point standings, so I'm still in the running, but I am 111 points out at this point. Staffordshire Motorsports 6th, 8 Ball Racing 7th, 8th for Richie Petty Jr., Jax Dodge 9th, and 76 Motorsports running out our top 10. Talked about Martinsville coming up next. Guys that you're going to want on your team: Denny Hamlin, Ryan Blaney, Kyle Larson. There's really no big surprises, really. Maybe if you want to swing for the fences, think about somebody like Ryan Preece, who's won a pole here and led a bunch of laps here and is a very good short track racer. You could think about, maybe Joey Logano having a rebound. Tyler Reddick is a guy that I would... you might at this point be playing him a lot. So maybe you've used him up a bit. So this is maybe a week to rest on Tyler Reddick. You watch, he'll go out and win again. Bubba Wallace is another guy who runs well here at Martinsville. Christopher Bell, of course, has won here before. So there's some guys to think about. I think Ryan Preece will definitely be a good wild card to think about. So with that said, let's head on over. Let's wrap up the show with this week's edition of the 16. Take a look at the NASCAR's point standings. Who's in the chase right now with the win. Tyler Reddick, of course, still your points leader now with 4 wins on the season and a 95-point lead over Ryan Blaney, who picked up 1 spot in the points. Bubba Wallace only dropping 1 spot with the terrible day to third, but he's 120 points behind Tyler Reddick after 6 events. That is crazy. Just 2 points behind Bubba Wallace now. In fourth is Denny Hamlin. No change there. Chase Elliott remains in fifth. 131 points back from the point leader. Here's where the changes begin. Up to William Byron with a ho-hum day at Darlington. He's 6th. Chris Buescher, again, he had a good points day. He's up 2 spots to 7th. Christopher Bell with that bad run, he's down 2 spots to 8th. Brad Keselowski won those 2 stages, finished 2nd, had a really good points day. He is up 3 spots to 9th. He's one of the biggest movers in the 16. And one of the biggest losers this week, Kyle Larson, back down to 10th, 149 points out of the lead. Ty Gibbs, despite another top 10 run, drops 1 position in the standings, down 1 to 11th. Ryan Preece is up 1. He had a pretty good day. Didn't get the overall finish, but he got some stage points in the middle of the race, which helped him. He's 12th in points. Carson Hocevar up 2 spots in 13th. 14th with a good run, up 3, one of our bigger movers of the week. Daniel Suarez, again, top 10 run. He is now 14th in the standings and in the chase. Shane Van Gisbergen back up into 15th with a good run. And the biggest loser on the weekend, Joey Logano in the 22. No stage points. Larson at least got stage points, but Logano got nothing to show for his day, only a handful of points. He drops 5 positions, and he's now on the bubble, actually tied with Michael McDowell, but he gets the tiebreaker. So the battle for the final spot, Joey Logano tied with Michael McDowell, and then 15 points behind them is A.J. Allmendinger in 18th. Zane Smith is 19 points back in 19th, and 20th, Ross Chastain is back 24 points right now for making it into the chase. A long way to go. We're 6 races into 26. There are 20 races left in the regular season before we get the chase cutoff. But there's the bubble, a tie for the final spot right now. And then, what did I say, 24 points, so less than 25 points behind is the top 20 gap. Look at some of these guys we've been talking about on the hot seat. Welcome to the conversation. Austin Cindric with that 5th place run. He went up 9 spots. He's 21st. Chase Briscoe up 4 spots in 22nd. They still have work to do. Kyle Busch loses another spot. He's definitely on the hot seat right now. He's back to 23rd in points. Other guys that really need to get going, your Austin Dillons, your Noah Gregsons, Todd Gillens, Ricky Stenhouse. A win doesn't save you this year. You can't just win and be in the playoffs. Like, these guys are in big trouble. Josh Berry, 32nd. The one that I'm really nervous about right now is Connor Zilic. He did pick up 2 points, 2 positions. He's up to 33rd in the standings. If this was last year, you pretty much bank on him winning at least a road course race, right? He's got that much talent. Now, I'm questioning if that's even going to happen. He can't just lock himself in now. He's going to have to go get all these points. He's only got 69 points. He's 256 points out of the lead. So is his season over? I mean, I don't think we're getting a rookie champion this year, Can he make the playoffs? Can he even be in the conversation? He better go win 2 or 3 road course races and get them bonus points. And then we'll talk. Alex Bowman, of course, we've been talking about his battle with vertigo. He's still 36th in the standings. Going to miss at least Martinsville and Bristol. When he comes back, he's just going to be running to get comfortable again in the car, go trophy hunting, try to save his job. He's definitely he's not going to make the chase. So if you had him in your chase, sorry, I think you lost out on that one. So that's a rundown of the 16. It continues to evolve. It's interesting to follow, but we're starting to see, the usual suspects. We still got guys like Briscoe, Cindric, Zilic. We still got guys we're keeping our eyes on, but I think the biggest surprise right now after 6 races still in the playoffs is Daniel Suarez. That's a guy I had as, if I'm remembering my preview, not a chance, right? I figured he'd be down 24th, 25th, maybe 30th in the standings, and he's 14th after 6 races. And looking at his stats, a top 5, 2 top 10s, it's not bad for Daniel Suarez. That's about what he had last year at Trackhouse. So we'll see how that continues to brew. Martinsville next week, short track racing. I kind of talked about it a little while ago. Not the best for this car, not something I really look all that much forward to, but honestly, looked forward to Vegas. It was kind of meh. I was really hyped for Darlington. It was okay. I didn't hate the race. I was entertained by it. I never got bored by it. It just didn't have maybe I thought we were going to see a lot more drivers out of control. Not necessarily crashing and bashing, but just maybe some more slip and slide and more guys hitting the wall. I think everybody just really drove a great race, and it was a pretty standard race, and Tyler Reddick is the man right now. So we'll see if he can keep it going at Martinsville. I don't think he does. My Martinsville pick, I'll give it to you right now, Denny Hamlin. I think Hamlin gets his second win of the season next week, and I think he holds off Kyle Larson. I think those guys run 1-2 next week. So we'll see how it all plays out. We'll be back next week. Next week's show, not going to have much local stuff to talk about with New Smyrna being off. Maybe we'll peek in and see what Auburndale's got going on. But we'll cover the Martinsville event. We'll do the 16. We'll do the fantasy stuff. And get a couple of weeks off before New Smyrna's back. So next couple shows might be a little bit shorter. Might be NASCAR focused. But hopefully you guys will stick along, join us for the ride. Auburndale, I believe, has super late models this Saturday. So you can head on over there and see what's left in the super late model world after the Rattler. And like I said, maybe we'll check in on that, recap that a little bit for a local flair, and we'll get ready for Family Fun Night on the 11th. The Orange Blossom 100 Super Late Model Race at New Smyrna is coming up on the, April 25th. So that should be a lot of fun. Get your registrations in for that now, and we'll, of course, be talking about that. Like I said, month of April, a little bit light for New Smyrna, but we'll cover what we get, and we'll keep rolling on with the show. So thank you guys for listening. Thank you to everybody that did show up to the Spring Fling that made it better than it could have been. I was very much entertained by it. Very much enjoyed working with Zechariah. Looking forward to getting Zach back when he's able to be back, hopefully for Family Fun Night. And we'll hear Zechariah on the mic probably a couple more times throughout the year. And honestly, if anybody is interested in doing a little bit of, color commentary, and when I say that, be the second mic, no pressure situation, just come up, have fun. You don't have to know everybody. You don't have to know everything. If you sound like you know what you're talking about, you'll do a good job. If anybody's interested, it's fun to work with somebody else. It's fun to coach a little bit, and we may have some openings. So get with me, let me know. I'd love to work with you. If you want to come up there and try to take over the show, don't talk to me. No, I'm just kidding. But no, seriously, if you want to come have some fun in a laid back, live broadcast environment, let me know. We'll see if we can rotate some other guys in and out when Zach Miles is unable to be there due to his other commitments with his IHRA tour. Very interested in chatting with him about that, see how that went. I haven't really looked at results, to be honest with you. I know Rod Butcher got into somebody and had somebody in his window net, but that's really all I know. But yeah, we'll catch up with Zach and get some info on that. So, all right, guys, that's all I got. It's getting late. I'm ready to go to bed, but I wanted to get this show recorded and hopefully up a little bit sooner than last week's show. And with that said, get out there, support your local short tracks. We'll see you back in New Smyrna on the 11th. And until then, vroom, vroom on.